Good morning, everyone. This is Tim Seldin, president of the Montessori Foundation, and with me today are three friends from the company called TADS, T-A-D-S. I haven't got a clue where that name originally came from, but I know them as TADS. We have Martin Peyer, who's been a friend of mine for the last year or two. I met him when he asked me to come and speak at a conference that he was presenting at up in Philadelphia. I found it fascinating. I really enjoyed learning about his product. We liked it enough that we adopted it at the Montessori Foundation's lab school. And he's just fairly recently picked up a piece of software that really caught my attention and led me to ask he and his colleagues to come. With him are Ben McLean and Jason Brune. Jason has laryngitis like I did 2 weeks ago. He sounds a lot better than I did. But Jason, I think, is going to, for the most part, stay in the background so he doesn't sound like Froggy. Martin, you're the president and founder of TADS. Tell me a little bit about where's the name TADS come from?
Well, the TADS name is actually about 50 years old, and when the company was starting long before I got involved, it was working with a local Catholic diocese, and it was tuition aid data services. About 12 years ago now, we got involved, and since then we've added many things other than financial aid. So we've just gone to the TADS moniker, and we use the TADS and don't say much tuition aid data services anymore. We say tested and designed by schools, because that's really what we focus on, is finding out what schools need to do their business and then helping them do that way.
Now, Martin, I first met you up at the National Catholic Leadership Roundtable. And among other things, I learned that neither you nor I are Catholic, but obviously fond of Catholic schools, both of us. I went to Georgetown. You've been working with Catholic schools, I imagine, ever since you got involved with TADS, and you got involved with Montessori in part because of your grandchildren, as I understand it.
That's very true. I've had an 18-month-old who wasn't doing very well at home, but within 2 weeks after he started at a Montessori school, he was saying, "Okay, your turn, my turn," and we just went from there. Now I have two grandchildren who have spent some time at the schools, and as I've delved further into the Montessori methods and Maria and all of that, I'm continually impressed by how they do brain development, and are very interested in helping them expand exponentially throughout the world. So
you have certainly been
a
good friend of Montessori's over the last couple of years, and I know that all of us really appreciate it. You're originally a CPA, as I recall.
I am a CPA, MBA, spent 25 years at a Fortune 500 insurance company in the controllers area, collecting 1 million payments a month for the insureds, and did quite a bit of financial analysis there. Retired from there, and then was looking for something to do with my son, and we've ventured upon this.
Well, there you go. So tell us a little bit more about TADS. We know it stands now for Tuition Aid Data Services originally. What is TADS these days, or would you rather wait to have Ben, who's I believe going to really lead us through a more detailed presentation? But what can you share with us at the beginning?
Well, TADS really is a software-enabled service, which means that we spend a lot of effort creating software that allows us to serve school families. We collected about $1 billion in tuition the last year, and we're working with close to 200,000 families now nationwide, helping them go to private schools. And anything that has a tuition, we're capable of helping them do their enrollment, admissions, and tuition incidental billing collection.
Obviously, this is not the sexiest part of running a school's life. It is one of the things that most people who are in Montessori school leadership would rather not do. Uh, Many of us who've been around for a while have known several of the companies. Tuition Management Services has been around for years. There are others that have been around. And yet, when I looked at TADS the first time, I found it to be different. One of the things I want to share with those people who are listening is I found TADS actually does a lot of the collection. They're not just a service to bill parents. They'll actually get out and email and call them. And not everyone's going to pay their tuition, but even though tuition's an ugly word, and many of us wish that we could have government funding without government control, the reality is a significant majority of Montessori schools today are independent schools. They do depend primarily on tuition to pay the bills, and tuition, unfortunately, is a handshake between the family and the school. In other words, you are paying for a service and letting people know what they owe and keeping on top of them and collecting from them is frankly the difference between a school surviving and a school collapsing. And I just wanted to begin by telling everyone that, I've seen this stuff for years, and it's not my favorite part of school leadership. It doesn't get me all enthralled. But I must say that TADS is different. Different enough that we decided to switch over, and we don't do that casually. Um, and then recently, I learned that Martin and TADS had purchased a software originally developed for Catholic school management called Cornerstone. And while Cornerstone was not specifically written for Montessori schools, it does a lot of the things that many of us have been trying to find software to do. So I don't know what you're doing in your school, whether you're using MRX or whether you're using Montessori Compass like we do and recommend. The bottom line is those are great for keeping notes of what the child has done within the Montessori curriculum and communicating out to parents what they do. But it's not a database. You can't run your fundraising and your grandparent database and easily do your mailing lists except for the parents themselves. It's a great software, but it's not the same thing as the software that typically is used to run an independent school. And I don't know how much Martin and his team are going to talk about Cornerstone. This is not a canned presentation from my end, but I do want to tell you folks who are listening that it's Cornerstone as much as TADS. It really got my attention. I called Martin up the day I heard about this and I said, when you added Cornerstone to the rest of what you already had, you really caught my attention because I really believe Cornerstone is going to meet the needs of a lot of schools. Now, some of you who are out there are mostly early childhood centers, and you may be using traditional early childhood childcare center software like OnCare or ProCare. And that may be meeting your need just fine. But if you are elementary and go up through middle school and are not really running a daycare, child care center, those kinds of softwares may really not be compatible at all. I'm not going to suggest that Cornerstone is a perfect match either, but by far, it is the closest thing to what I really believe we need that I've seen. And especially if one day TADS and Montessori Compass get together so the two softwares communicate with each other, I think we're going to really have something powerful. But TADS and its collection of software solutions is a very interesting package that I wanted to invite them to share with you about today because it is worth your time and attention. So, Martin, back to you and Ben and the rest of your team, anyone that wants to share about your company. What are you guys doing?
Okay, well, we've got a little bit of a slideshow here to go through if we can get started. And what I did was brought together a short list of Montessori school leader responsibilities, and you certainly know these better than I do, but they're here for you to look at more than for anything else, but it just shows the breadth of your responsibilities, and they'll be there for you to look at. And I gathered these from NBOA, so they're an independent school list of things, and some of those schools have 1,000 or 2,000 students, so they have various people to do the various roles. But still, everything that a 5,000 student school does, you do it if you have 50 students. So what I really want to say is that you have a broad spectrum of responsibilities, but your core competencies, those attributes that set you apart and provide greatest value, are using Maria Montessori's scientific methods. And I'm really wanting to see that the number of Montessori guides and learners continues to spread significantly. And many of the administrators' responsibilities take real leadership and consultative abilities to assure that that ideal is achieved in the classroom. But many of the school's processes that take your time are transactional, recurring, and really take your attention while not contributing to the learning environment nor to your core competencies. With current technology, and that's where TADS comes in, because we came a bit late to the game, our systems are different than others that are out there because we were able to create everything within the last 5 years. And technology, we've been here 12 years, but technology has changed so much in the last 5 years that it really provides capabilities that weren't available until very, very recently. And we just want to show you that you can use a third-party administrator to perform the recurring transactional processes, and you'll be able to focus on your core capabilities and thus expand the universe for Montessori schools. So with that, we'll let Ben go ahead and discuss some of the things that we're doing, and he'll talk about the admissions enrollment, financial aid, and tuition collection, in addition to covering Cornerstone, because they are one system and they all fit together. So it saves you from having to enter data, having to coordinate between systems, and I'll let Ben cover it more effectively.
I want to remind everyone, by the way, that these webinars are Montessori School Leadership webinars. They're not specifically aimed at teachers, although we have teachers that listen in. Also want to remind you, if by any chance you haven't figured this out in the past, you can ask questions throughout the webinar on the tabs on your right-hand side of your screen. There should say something called Go to Webinar Control Panel. Just send me your thoughts or comments under questions. There's also a chat panel, and you can feel free to chat back and forth. Ben, please carry on.
All right. Thank you very much, Tim. Now, everyone, I'm here to talk today a little bit about how you can improve your processes within the school. TADS, we've been in business for about 43 years now. We've been online for 12 of those years. So we actually do have really a lot of knowledge about exactly what it takes to manage a school. So I personally, a little bit of background information on me. I have been with TADS for, I believe, about 4 years now. About 2.5 of those years was spent in implementation. So whenever a school did decide that they wanted to use TADS, I would be responsible for setting up admissions, setting up enrollment, setting up tuition management. Financial aid is covered a little bit differently within the company, but I would really be the point person setting up all of the customizations and really kind of with the school along the entire process with all of that set up and any support that they might need, getting in touch with me and giving them a little bit better feel for the system there. So I'll go ahead and start here on a couple processes we think that your schools can really benefit from here. Now, guys, as Marty's mentioned, as Tim has mentioned, we do have 4 modules on top of that Cornerstone. We do have an application module. We do have an enrollment module. We have a tuition management module. We also have a financial aid assessment module. Now, what we typically see here at TADS, and the reason why we went to an integrated approach with all of these products is a lot of the schools that we're calling in are using 4 or 5 different vendors to really do everything that TADS can do underneath one roof. So, for example, we typically, and I specifically have seen a lot of schools that are using 5 different vendors. As you can imagine, that's going to get a little bit difficult with all of the communication between those different modules, having to enter in duplicate information into every single one of those modules. Really, it's going to take a lot more work to do the exact thing that TADS is looking to do here with this integrated module here. Now, one of the bigger things with using several different vendors as opposed to one vendor is none of those modules are going to communicate with each other. So start to finish, you're going to be able to start with the TADS process with an application, move over to enrollment, move over to tuition management, and then somewhere in there a financial aid application is formed. We also do have integration with that financial aid assessment directly onto our tuition contracts once you've actually decided what amount of award your families are going to be receiving. We can just import that directly onto the tuition contract, making things a lot easier for the administrators and for the families there. We do have a very user-friendly parent access. We are a web-based company that can be accessed pretty much anywhere. Parents are going to be able to go into the system and edit everything, saving you guys a lot of work. I know we're also working on an iPad app, making things even more user-friendly for your families to go into the system and either fill out an application, enroll, fill out a tuition management agreement. We're really doing whatever we can to make things as easy as possible for the families there. Now, what's great about an integrated system, again, is really going to be the accuracy. As I'm sure you can imagine, Tim, having to switch data from multiple different systems, it's very easy for information to get lost either in the import spreadsheet phase or, something could just be left off a spreadsheet that was being imported. It really does cut down on
the time.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's really going to cut down on user error, making things a lot more accurate, a lot easier for the schools. Let's see here. And we also do have the ability to assign roles within a school. So if you do have an admissions director that only deals specifically with admissions, we can open up that module specifically for that person, or we can really enable all the modules. We have the ability of customizing that really a lot within the system, making things easier for your families, or easier for your administrators, excuse me. It really helps to give a clear definition of the workflow for the administrators within a school there. All right, and I will continue on here to the next slide. Now, again, what I was touching on earlier, we do have everything underneath one roof, so it is going to be a very big benefit to the schools having everything under one roof. Tim, I'm sure you were at one point a little bit frustrated with having multiple logins for multiple modules, and same with families. It really is difficult for those families to remember all of those passwords and just remember all of that information and kind of flip-flop from one system. They're able to use the TADS login for really every product that we're seeing here today, making things a lot easier for them. Now, what's great, again, about the TADS process is going to be the level of customization available within the admissions module, within that enrollment module. Now, Tim, you've been using us for a couple of years now. How was the customization process for the applications module and for enrollment? How did you find that? Pretty easy to use, pretty easy to get all the questions you wanted in there?
Well, Yes, I mean, it certainly was easy. It required a few of my staff members really had to sit down and work with you folks to understand exactly what it was. Once they got that
Sure.
straight, I mean, you folks definitely work with them beautifully. You've got all of our contracts and our forms are all electronic. Parents now are used to the idea that they apply online, they submit the request for records online, they download PDFs of the teacher reports, they upload them to us. Like most Montessori schools, we get applications from parents, not just from the local community, but
Sure.
people that are moving from around the United States and around the world. I want to remind everyone this is different from Montessori Compass. It's not a record keeping system. This is a tool that from the moment they go to your website and they want to apply, whether it's for financial aid or admission to the school, or when it comes time to do re-enrollment, I must say the second year when we were fully implemented with you all this year, doing re-enrollment was fast and smooth. Everything is done electronically. And the other thing that
Hmm.
really captured my attention is the way you all went out and followed up with parents who were falling behind in their tuition. That's frankly almost like having a collection agency. And not
Hmm.
one complaint has ever come in to us about the way you and your staff have handled it. No one's been offended or embarrassed.
Perfect. That's really exactly what we like to hear, and you pretty much hit it right there. I'm not 100% aware, and don't quote me on this exactly, but I'm not aware of any other tuition management company that is going to do those follow-up calls. And Tim, a lot of schools have found that that's very useful. If we do just kind of give them a nice reminder, it really isn't a collection call. We're just reminding these families, hey, you are delinquent on a particular payment. If you could go ahead and make a payment at your earliest convenience, that would be great. And Tim, I believe you touched on a little bit earlier. How has everything been going? How's the parent feedback been with this transition to admissions enrollment? I know typically with the first year especially, it is a little bit difficult to get everyone on the same page as to what admissions is versus enrollment and really getting them used to doing everything online. But I hope everything has been ironed out, and I hope your parents are being a lot more receptive to that recently.
I must say the first year was very, very exciting. We started working
Hmm.
with you about 15 months ago, if I remember correctly, when we actually were up and running. And we had already done our contracts for the year.
Hmm.
We started having people who came into the school, like all schools. We had some mid year admissions. That went pretty well. But when it really got screwy was in the re enrollment. Because what we did is somebody clicked the quick re enroll, and you can explain that far better than I can. But basically, folks, try to imagine a situation where you have your contract is divided into two parts. The basic agreement to have the kid be at the school and the understanding that he's there for the entire year and what are the conditions in which the contract can be canceled. The other part is the tuition. How much do I owe you? What other fees do I owe you for? Are there any discounts that I apply for? And the mistake we made, and I say this just to humanize the experience, we didn't realize what we were doing, and our parents got to pick their own tuition and pick their own fees. It was quite exciting. We had to
Sure,
go in
sure.
there and fix that. This year's gone very smoothly. It's all been done in advance, and parents have re-enrolled. They paid their enrollment deposit. Now we're telling them what their tuition and their discounts are. They have to go in and sign it. And so far, everything is happening very smoothly.
Okay, good. Again, that's exactly what we like to hear. Now, what Tim was touching on there was our enrollment and our tuition agreement modules. Now, we have the ability of combining these two processes. Now, we keep them two separate just because sometimes it's a little bit easier for the families to, or for the schools to have an enrollment period and then a separate tuition agreement period. Again, this goes along with the customization of TADS. You're really able to do pretty much whatever your school would like there, and we're able to actually combine that enrollment and that tuition agreement process. We refer to that as streamlining. Your families would be able to really take care of that all in one step. And Tim, I'm just a little bit curious here again. Have you been sending your families to TADS for support, or are you typically handling that mostly in-house? Because that is a large part of the TADS system. It really is what we like to pride ourselves on, is the level of support we offer both administrators and families there. So I'm just curious what your experience has been with that.
Ben, in truth, that's handled by my associate head, Lorna McGrath. I don't know exactly how she's been handling it, but
Sure.
I certainly know that over the course of the year, there are people who have questions about their account or are confused about how to make a payment, and they'll typically call the bookkeeper. And he's told me that he's gotten far less calls over the last year, that they figured it out.
Oh, sure, exactly, and that's really a large part of it. It's really what a lot of schools do like. Now, some schools do like to keep all of that support in-house, where they want the families calling them directly. That's completely fine. We're not going to instruct anyone otherwise. But if a family does have a question about, Tim, like you were saying, a billing account, they were just a little bit curious about a particular charge, they wanted something possibly switched from one day to another, they're able to call into our support line. We've got about probably 40, 50 people here that their sole job really is to just answer those phones and help your families along the process. And a lot of the schools I've been working with have found this really beneficial. It really lets the administrators actually breathe a little bit. I know a lot of administrators I've dealt with have been overworked. This is going to help them a lot, really cut down on a lot of the support that they're doing within schools. All right, guys, we will switch over here to the online access portion. Now, what's nice about TADS is everything is real time. Any edits that would be made by your parents immediately once they enroll, you're going to be able to view that. Immediately a payment is made in the system. That's going to be updated simultaneously on a billing account. It doesn't take minutes, hours to actually update for an administrator to see. It's really all going to be done in real time. And a lot of schools have found this really beneficial instead of actually having to wait for everything to process there. It is nice to get the most up-to-date and accurate information as really is possible there. Now, within TADS, we have student, parent, teacher, and administrator access adjustments really from anywhere. That's touching, again, on the ability to log in pretty much from anywhere you would like. I know I've done a lot of work from my cell phone. I'm able to log into that small little screen and do a lot of work and make any changes in there. Administrators are also going to have that the same ability. Again, I was touching on here, in the future we will have an iPad app available as well, making all of this really even easier for the families there. Just a second here. Okay, perfect. Now, parental involvement. Now, Tim, I actually, this week I did a lot of research on exactly what these seminars are about, and I took a look at one in particular that really interested me, which was the online record keeping and communicating with papers. I believe that was mainly dealing with Montessori Compass. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. We've talked about
perfect.
the topic many times, but Compass is the primary tool that Montessori schools that we work with are using to communicate with their parents.
Okay, certainly. Now, what I heard in that seminar there, and what I found actually very interesting is it doesn't look like a lot of Montessori schools are currently using a student information system like Montessori Compass or like our Cornerstone system. Tim, is that correct? And would you mind give me a little bit of insight on why you think that's the case, and why they're a little bit hesitant to go towards that type of model there?
Well, maybe I'm not understanding. You're talking about Cornerstone's communication capabilities and why they're not using that?
Oh, sure. No, I'm just referring to a student information system like that Montessori Compass. Why schools are hesitant to go towards that type of student management system, which processes all of the attendance, lunch, homework, billing, grades, allows a parent portal for your parents to log in and see exactly how the families are doing.
Oh, well, from what I know, there are three main providers of the service: MRX, Montessori Compass, each of which has somewheres in the 400 or 500 Montessori schools using them.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another software, and I don't have any data about it, nor do I even remember what it's called, but there is at least another one out there in English. I think the biggest issue that people have as far as schools is getting their teachers to use them and use them well. Even those
Sure.
schools that use Montessori Compass and MRX, I hear that from administrators all the time, that the challenge is getting the parent to remember to log in, to see that there's information there, and getting the teachers to remember to put information in there other than the minimum that they must do.
Okay, sure. And that's really what we found is a lot of the difficulty, really tough to actually get teachers to sit down and use this. It is a struggle. It's kind of difficult to use it at the beginning, really learning all of the nuances of a program like Cornerstone or Montessori Compass. But we have found there are a lot of them actually do decide to implement that within a school. Now, we've done a lot of research on this. This is one of the larger reasons why we have integrated Cornerstone within TADS here, not only to have really a complete scope of software there, really a process from start to finish, but we found that it's easier for parents to access, that the easier it is for parents to access the information on their students, the easier it is to get involved in the education, any volunteering, really anything that might be associated with the school. We have really a lot of functionality with this a Cornerstone piece that we're discussing here a little bit. We have communication modules. We have the ability for families to log in, see their students attending, see their students' lunch balance, any homework that might be due, billing, any grading that might come up. There's really a lot that is offered with this Cornerstone system, and unfortunately, Jason knows a little bit more than I do about this particular system. He would expand on a little bit greater detail, but it really it just allows for your families to log in and be more involved in the school and be more involved in their students' education. We actually did a study here, or we found that in 2009, and this is obviously a little bit dated here, the U.S. Department of Education did a study on how over 80% of the parents prefer to communicate through email as opposed to a phone call or an in-person meeting. Now, with this Cornerstone module, there would be a communication module for those parents to speak directly with the teachers, email directly with them. Now, as you can imagine, that was 6 years ago. I'm assuming those numbers have only gotten larger. It's just easier, more convenient for families to actually shoot an email out as opposed to driving to the school to speak with a teacher directly or give up a phone call. Some people are just more comfortable actually doing everything in writing, which is another big benefit of using this TADS system here, or the Cornerstone system, excuse me. It also does have an alerts module. So anytime that there was a school closing or really anything that you might want your parents to be notified of immediately, you have the ability of either sending a text message out, voicemailing these families, or sending an email notification to let them know exactly what's going on in the school. And Tim, how have you found that alerts are done within the Montessori community? How is that typically done? Is it done with a phone call, a handwritten or a hand-typed email to all of your families? How is that typically handled?
When you say an alert, you mean like I just saw an email come across my desk that we're postponing a talent show on Friday night because of the cold
Sure.
Florida weather. Is that what you're
Exactly. That's
talking about?
the perfect example.
Mm-hmm. Usually it's constant contact. Um, In this particular case, I think we used Montessori Compass. And the trick with Montessori Compass is it's, again, one of those softwares you have to log in to read your email. It sends out an email at 5 o'clock every day letting people know you've got email. But I think Lorna, my assistant, had wanted to get everyone's attention right away and not wait till 5 o'clock tonight. The other thing I'm noticing, by the way, just as an aside about email, is parents across the country are telling me that they're swamped with email. And a lot of us are looking at what does it take to get people to open the email. And so some people are starting to use text. Certainly people are starting to be, they're doing end of message type emails where the entire message is in the header, the subject line. But anyway, that's the answer is Constant Contact or Montessori Compass, usually how it's done.
Okay, sure. And Tim, that's exactly right. Sometimes parents are just glazing through those emails. I know I've done it before. But what we have the ability to do with this Cornerstone system is, I mentioned the availability to have either a text, a voicemailing system, or an emailing notification. Now, the families would be able to choose their preferred method of contact. So if it is just easier for them to receive a text, they can get it. Everything can be sent out directly via text. Same with voicemail and same with email notification. Those families are going to be able to pick exactly how they want to be communicated with there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, just putting a plug in for our community, we would love to see Cornerstone, which I know you really acquired fairly recently, or beginning to look at how to improve the software that has been around for a while. We'd love to see it integrate in with Montessori Compass so that the databases are talking to each other, and whichever messaging system people use, it's all tied together so that, as you said, parents only have one place they have to log in.
And you know what, Tim, it certainly would make things a lot easier. And I know the main focus with Cornerstone, because it is so recent, is we're really just working on making sure that works very seamlessly with TADS. But once we've got everything figured out with that, once we've got all the kinks worked out with that, I'm sure we're going to take a look at integrating with other systems like Montessori Compass, just because there are so many different systems out there, and the easier it is to integrate from one to the other, the easier it is going to be on the school. So we certainly have taken that into consideration and are looking at doing that in the future here.
Yeah, and again, I want to say to everyone who's listening, we decided to work with Cornerstone just based on what little I knew as an outsider. And we're just beginning to ramp up. So I can't speak to anyone from an insider's perspective yet. But my guts, and I've been saying this to Martin for the last 2 or 3 months, my instinct is the Cornerstone is going to be incredibly valuable to many Montessori schools. And I'm saying that as someone just like you folks. They don't pay me for this. We appreciate that they advertise in Tomorrow's Child, but that's not how you get on a webinar. I believe that Cornerstone is really valuable as it is. And Ben, I believe you guys will ultimately make it better for all schools, including Montessori schools. So I'm anxious to serve as one of your advisors, and I expect anyone who's in the Montessori community who decides to follow us in adopting it as part of their TADS account. And I must say to everyone, you basically get it as packages, and you can choose what parts of the package you want. And it was so inexpensive to get a school-specific database system if you're already using TADS. And TADS was so useful in its own right that that's really why we're having this conversation today, is I really think you guys are onto something.
Well, good, and Tim, that's exactly what we like to hear. Now, what we're looking to do here at TADS, and what we feel, again, sets us apart from a lot of other companies, is TADS now currently stands for Tested and Designed by Schools. Now, if anyone listening who is currently using TADS, or even if you do have a suggestion about what we might be able to do in the future to better cater to Montessori schools, feel free to get in contact with either myself or Marty. I'm sure we can send out all of that information, contact information after the fact. We're always looking to tailor this to our schools. We always are looking to upgrade this, upgrade a particular module, or flip things around if they're just a little bit confusing to the parents. So, a lot of the system, a lot of the upgrades we've made in the past 3 years are really just recurring things that we've seen from administrators asking for. For example, we just added a more intuitive mass billing system where we can easily add any incidental billing charges onto a student's billing account really in mass. We have a number of other features that the only reason that we've made that upgrade is because we've seen a consistent theme in exactly what these administrators want, exactly what these schools want, to make their lives easier. So anyone, that we really do encourage you that if you do have any suggestions for TADS, please feel free to submit them to us, and we'll certainly take that into consideration and look at doing that for the future.
Great.
Now, this next screen we're seeing here is a little bit of that Cornerstone module. So as you can see here, if we want to take a look over to the right, we've got things like assignments, grading, attendance, report cards, schedule, really all of that information. This is from a parent's perspective. So this is everything that a parent is going to have access to. So as you can see here, it really is going to give the families a lot of information, and the more involved they can be in a student's education, really the better. Now, one thing I would like to point out here is, Tim, do you believe, and this is what I'm just assuming, I could be completely wrong here, that a lot of the schools, a lot of Montessori schools are currently using paper report cards, or how do you think that process is being handled? I really would actually like a little bit more information on that myself.
I think the answer is there is no one answer. Most Montessori schools don't issue letter grades. If they do, they're probably modified. We traditionally do a lot of narrative, and the bulk of our reporting needs, at least up through the 6th grade, are probably being done reasonably well by Montessori Compass. Now, that's a different conversation. I think all of us who use Montessori Compass and MRX, are struggling with what would we like the ideal report to look like. To me, your best feature is not the your report card, although it's fine, and we'll ultimately create with you a report card that we'll start using next year, but it'll still be based around Montessori Compass. So it'll just be a sort of a summary document that we'll keep. What I really like is that, like some of the Montessori schools online, we go through the 12th grade, and many of them go through 8th grade. And some of them do keep records that are similar to standard transcripts. So if for those of you that use that kind of document, this is the typical independent school software, and it'll certainly serve a charter school like Jeannie runs, or a public school as well, although that's probably provided by your district according to local district standards. By the way, I have a note or two. First off, Carrie Leichter is laughing that we said it was cold down here in Sarasota. I think it might be 60 degrees out there and we're freezing. She's up in South Dakota, and she says it's 7 degrees. Jeannie says, we use observation notes for progress reports, and this would not do. And I assume, Jeannie, what you're saying is this type of report card isn't what we typically do in Montessori. And again, I don't think that's the big strength of Cornerstone as it's currently developed. It is useful. I mean, there are values to having this kind of thing. Forgive me.
Oh, that's fine, Tim. And if I could actually just cut in here really quickly.
Please.
Now, I apologize for showing you the standard ABC format. That's just something that we pulled up here because that's typically what most of our schools are using. Now, we do realize that most Montessori schools are on some type of standard. Now, we can also customize this report card as well. So whatever grading you are using currently within the school, we can actually work that in our report card as well. So that's actually very customizable as well. That's really what we're going for here is just the most customizable system for as many schools as we possibly can reach out to.
That sounds just fine.
Hey, yes, sorry to cut you off there, Tim. If you did have anything else that you were going on, please feel free to continue.
No, please continue yourself. I think that this happened to be an issue that a lot of Montessorians, and you wouldn't know this, Ben, many of them we don't believe in letter grades, and we don't usually do that. And that's, as I said, that's fine. To me, what I really want to communicate to Carrie and to Jean and the others is what I like about this is a better student record-keeping system, not so much because of the grades, or even the observation notes that we keep in Montessori Compass. We all still need some kind of database, and especially when it comes to fundraising and alumni and friends of the school, we all need something, and we don't have it. And if you're already using TADS anyway, which you may not be, but if you choose to, then Cornerstone doesn't cost much at all to add on, and it's really valuable.
Perfect. Exactly right, Tim. We do find a lot of value in it as well. So I will continue on here to the next slide. The ease of administrator workload. Now, we've already touched on this a little bit with the amount of support that TADS takes on, which we're hoping that is making the administrators' lives in the school a heck of a lot easier. It should be easier for the administrators when they've got all of the admissions, enrollment, tuition management, financial aid data, all of that Cornerstone in one central source. It should be easier for them to log on just to one centralized source instead of having to log on to 3 or 4 different vendors. We do have a large amount of custom reporting that is available within the system. We actually do have a completely custom report section where every piece of data that we're asking for in the admissions or enrollment section is going to appear on basically a drop-down where you're going to be able to select each piece of information that you would like to show up in an Excel spreadsheet. A lot of administrators have found that that's super easy to work for. That's actually a change we made in the system that administrators had pushed for quite a while. It's something we got done here within the last year, and it's made the administrators' lives a heck of a lot easier. Everything really is a lot easier to go to that one centralized source and pull all of that information, exactly what they're looking for, instead of getting a report with a lot of information that they don't feel like they need. Another thing that it's going to be eliminating is the cost of paper and really the shuffling of files. A lot of the schools that we work with, the first year going to TADS, previously what they were doing is an all-paper process. Now, as you can imagine, that gets a little bit difficult when you're trying to find specific pieces of data. Things get lost, things get misplaced, coffee gets spilled on pieces of paper. I'm sure you're all very well aware of that. Having everything online on a database like TADS is really going to make everything easier to find, and again, it's going to make sure that all of that data is uncompromised and be able to pull it up whenever you would like. Now, what we've had in the past, and we certainly hope it doesn't happen with your schools, is sometimes situations can get messy in a school where an admissions director leaves all of a sudden. It's kind of a sudden thing that happens within the school. They're very unhappy. They leave within a week time period. Somebody is trying to pick up their work within the school without actually having a lot of knowledge of what was previously done. Now, that's where the customer support comes in a very, very nice fashion. Is if a administrator were to leave for whatever reason, somebody from the school can simply call up to TADS and say, hey, I really need to know exactly what's going on with admissions. All of that's going to be centralized. All of that data will be stored for them, and we're going to be able to walk them through the system. Jason, who's not actually on the phone right now, or who is on the phone but is not actually speaking, is our training director. So he's going to be in charge of making sure that that administrator is up to speed with as many training sessions as is necessary to get the school up to speed, to get everything up and running. We know that can be a very tough thing for the school. We certainly hope that it doesn't happen, but things like that do happen, and we are here to help in a situation like that. Now, Tim, that is pretty much everything I had for you here today. After this screen that we're looking at, I have a couple screenshots of exactly what TADS is going to look like, a couple reports. But does anyone have any questions? Is there anything else you'd like me to touch on in a little bit greater detail there? I know I might have gone a little bit fast over a couple categories. So anything I can possibly touch on in a little bit greater detail for anyone on the phone here?
Well, let's see if anyone wants to jump in. So folks, the line is open. If you want to ask a question live, just tell me. I'll be happy to open your mic. You want to type any note or ask a question by text, just type it on in. Looking to hear from you. In terms of what I have known about TADS and what I've seen over the years and what you've covered, I think that the biggest thing to remember is TADS is essentially a way of, one, if you are tuition-based independent school, this is a really useful way of billing parents for tuition and keeping track of your accounts receivable and even assisting you in collecting it. So right there, it's really valuable. There is a fee. The parents pay that directly. They can avoid the fee by either paying you in advance or paying you in 2 installments. That's what I've noticed. If you do charge different fees depending on how people pay, Martin and Ben and Jason and the others work with you to structure it so that all of those options are built in. Financial aid, they have the same kind of financial aid analysis that I've gotten in the past from groups like FACTS and FAST. But the fact that it's all tied together is, from my experience, really, really useful. If you've never used a financial aid processing or evaluating software, I'm telling you, that's one of the best features of this entire thing. You don't want to be making financial aid decisions and asking people to reveal their confidential family data yourself. They do that for you. They do not tell you or the parent how much they're going to get. That's up to you. They simply do an analysis of what they see based on the confidential information the parents get. I will tell you, by the way, as an aside, you do get to see that information. As far as I know, certainly we see a lot. The application process really is neat because a person applies, you get to decide, and they can apply for financial aid. You make your decisions about financial aid. If they decide they want to accept, you accept them, then you give them their enrollment agreement online. They sign it electronically. They pay for it electronically. Everything is handled without the pushing of paper. That includes PDFs of your parent handbooks and the medical forms and the allergy forms and all the paperwork of schools. And then when you combine that in with Cornerstone, which costs just a few dollars a year per child, you're getting a database for the families and for the school as a whole that really makes for a much stronger system. Now I see that Laurie Smart has asked a question. She says, what portion of this program is available through TADS and which portion is part of Cornerstone?
Okay, sure. Now, what we're currently looking at here is going to be a screenshot of the billing screen here. Now, if we look up at the top, we're going to see an admissions module, an enrollment module, a financial aid module, and a tuition agreements module. Now, those 4 are what we offer here at TADS. Cornerstone is going to be all of your any grading, attendance, any of that type of information is going to be included over in the Cornerstone aspect of things. So TADS is those 4 modules, that admissions, enrollment, financial aid, tuition agreements, all actually flip over to our little infographic we have here. So this this application, enrollment, tuition management, our tuition management and financial aid assessment are what we offer here at TADS. Those are our original products. Now, Tim, actually one other thing to touch on with that financial aid, we do also have an awards module. And are you currently using the awards module, Tim, or how are you notifying your families once you actually have those financial aid awards amounts finalized, and how are you getting that information out to the families?
Well, truthfully, I don't know the answer to that. It's done by Lorna and Robin at our school, but I assume that's how they're telling them.
Okay, sure. And you know, honestly, I probably should have done a little bit of background information and just checked on that before we got on the phone here. But what our awards management module will allow you to do is basically create a template, which obviously things like the student name and the award that's specific to the student will automatically plug into that template, and we'll use all of the existing information that was used in the financial aid application, the email address, all of the names, and we can mass send out all of that information to the families. Administrators have found it a little bit easier than, you know, writing a handwritten letter or typing a handwritten email notifying them of those amounts. So there's really a lot of customizability there as well. So I just thought I'd touch on that there really quickly.
That's a good point.
A couple of comments here, listening in.
Yeah.
Now, what TADS does is not to computerize your processes. What TADS tries to do is look at your objectives, what you want for end results, and then design for you a way of getting those results. So if you have 5 different forms that you send out for enrollment, TADS will take questions off of each of those forms, put them in related sections, and do one process, one questionnaire document to get it done. So it's not that we're computerizing your work, we're doing different work and something that's much more efficient from us, so we don't need to duplicate what you had been doing.
Good point. I've got a question from Charlie Biggs asking, does TADS integrate with QuickBooks Online or other accounting software?
Okay, sure. Now, what we do here to handle that is we have a report over in our billing section, and if I were actually on the live side of things, I'd go ahead and show you exactly what that report looks like. But what we like to do here at TADS and really appropriate accounting principles is TADS is going to be your general ledger, whereas TADS is going to be your sub-ledger, whereas QuickBooks is going to be your general ledger. So at the end of each month, you'd basically download the report that we have there within TADS and make journal entries within QuickBooks. Peyer actually does handle that as well. So if anyone does need any assistance with that, if they were a little bit confused on exactly how to do that and correct accounting principles, I know she's available to walk schools through that as well. So she does a lot of work with that. But we do like TADS to be the subledger and QuickBooks to be the general ledger, with just making those monthly journal entries there.
Some of you folks may know a subledger as a subsidiary ledger, a separate document that becomes part of your overall accounting records for the year, and your accountant works from that. But I think the key is, no, it doesn't integrate all that data in, nor do you really need to. As long as you've got that subsidiary ledger, it's not essential that QuickBooks have it in there. And I'm sure that folks would like to have it in there, and that may be something you want to look at in the future. But I can tell you, we don't. We haven't for the last 5 years literally tried to keep all of the records on the individual kids, because we've always had, before we used TADS, we used SMART and certainly, TMS, Tuition Management System. They did the same basic stuff. TADS does it better in our opinion. But the bottom line is it gives you that subsidiary ledger that you need. to answer questions when parents want to argue about their bill. It's all there.
Hey guys, here is, we just actually uploaded our contact information. As I was mentioning earlier, we really would love to hear any suggestions that you might have if you're looking for possibly a webinar over individual products, or really just want some more information about TADS. Please feel free to get in touch with us here. We really would enjoy hearing from you.
Terrific. We have a moment or two if anyone wants to ask any last questions, or if you have a comment that you want to pass along. While I'm waiting to see if anyone jumps in, I want to remind everyone that these sessions are recorded. Usually it takes me about 3 days before I put them onto the Montessori Foundation website. You can find them at montessori.org/webinars. Right now, they're all on one web page. I'm going to put them into a blog type database, so you'll be able to search according to keywords, but they are publicly available to people who are visiting our website. Totally separate from that, I want to remind all of you who are IMC members that we have an IMC members library that is password protected, and it has all sorts of resources, including recordings and webinars of different sorts that are not open to the public and are benefits of membership. Don't see any other messages, so I'm going to say thank you to all of you folks who joined in this week, and to you, Ben, and to you, Martin, and to you, Jason, for joining us. I want to remind everyone that next week we have part 2 of the webinar with Liesl Liang. This time she's going to be talking about online marketing using Facebook and your newsletter and constant contact. So please join in if you're interested. And again, we thank you. I'm going to be sending everyone in the next few days a questionnaire that I hope you'll fill out, asking you whether or not this is a good day and a good time, and whether there's other topics you wish we would cover in this ongoing series of webinars on Montessori school leadership. Thank all of you for joining me this week, Martin and Ben and Jason, and thanks to everyone else for being there. Those of you who are up in the Northland, please stay warm. All of us in Florida are working really hard to stay warm too. We'll see you next week.